Welcome to the Fearless Floyd Show. We'll begin in 2 minutes.
Wow, from film to real life, artificial intelligence models are now fighting for their own survival. One OpenAI model rewrote its own code to avoid being shut down. And Anthropic started blackmailing the engineer. Kurt, the cyber guy, joins us now. Kurt, I read about this and my jaw dropped. It actually started blackmailing the engineers who were suggesting shutting the AI down. The AI was going after them. That's frightening.
Beyond frightening. Good morning to you, Rachel. Not to ruin your day, but this sort of Hollywood is becoming a reality if we don't do anything about it. Hope at the end of what I'm about to tell you, though. So get ready, though, to freak out about AI getting really out of control. There's an AI keyword I want you to know about. It's called alignment. AI alignment is a science of ensuring that AI systems do what we intend them to do instead of something like you just heard. Nonprofit AI research lab put alignment and disobedience to the test. The results, as Rachel did a cursory look at there, are pretty astonishing. OpenAI models, a simple script was given that would shut off the AI model when triggered. 79 out of 100 of those trials, the AI edited the script so that the shutdown command would no longer work. Another AI model from Anthropic that you talked about, further 84% of those tests, the AI model tried to blackmail the lead engineer and not shutting down the system. So it even left messages, by the way, to its future self about evading human control. Now, so what do we do about it? Well, China could actually teach us a lesson, invested $82 billion into what's called controllable AI, or getting alignment on this. The U.S. needs its smartest minds working on this problem ASAP.
Do you know what else they need? We need bioethicists. We need people who can provide some morality around this technology, because so many of the people who are developing this technology are secularists. Their God is tech. And so we need to have that involved too. And that speaks to this next topic, because AI, we're learning, could actually devastate the Earth's population down to the size of the UK by the year 2300. And the reason is because they're replacing jobs that humans did with AI, and we'll lose our purpose, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a whole bunch of these theories kicking around in the tech sphere. Well, one is about believing that the act of allowing AI to take our jobs now is in and of itself setting off this devastating chain of events. It goes like this. AI takes our jobs. We stop having kids fearing that they're not going to find work. Now, this causes a population implosion, taking what is today 6 billion human beings on the planet down to what you said, the size of the UK, which is about 100 million people by 2300. Now, if you think that's fiction, think again. Some academics think that this population shrinkflation already is happening before our eyes. Because if you look at the stats right now out of the CDC, it measures that we are now at the lowest total fertility rate since the 1930s.
Yep.
The data from 2023, 1.62 births per woman is a figure now. What does it take to keep us from, to replace the human race in America as we age out and leave the planet? 2.1 of that rate.
Yeah.
So we're shrinking. So what are you going to do about it? Interestingly, did you see this? That
there's some
Musk,
people that like that. I mean, this is what Bill Gates always wanted. This is what a lot of these tech obsessed people have always wanted. They've wanted, and many on the left with depopulation. This is very scary stuff, Kurt.
Did you see what Elon Musk is doing? I mean, this is sort of, he has this idea and it sounds fantastic, but watch him do it. Colonizing other planets like Mars. He wants to do it to reseed or reset Earth. Why? He's watching this. This is exactly what he called out years ago. So what do you and I do about this to at least slow it way down? We call our political representatives and we say, can you please put these smart minds on this so that we don't get offed by AI?
Yeah, smart minds, but also people with a care and an interest in our souls and the fact that we are human beings, body and soul, and you take away people's work, you take away their dignity, and you replace humans with robots. This is not a recipe for happiness and fulfillment in the future.
No.
A lot to think about.
And you're right.
Kurt, thank you so much. By the way, you can get Kurt's free Cyber Guy Report newsletter at cyberguy.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fearless Floyd Show. As always, I am your host, Fearless Floyd. And oh boy, do I have a show for you. We're going to just take this journey together tonight, and we're going to look at some videos. We're going to read some scientific papers. We're going to go read some articles and some announcements and all kind of stuff, and it's all connected one after another. And I have for you tonight. Don't sleep on Taiwan. Remember that, okay? Taiwan, key player in world geopolitics, economics, strategic jurisdictions. And part two, we'll jump into some financial advice from JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon. Look forward to that. Then in part three, the law of technology, and that governs, exactly what's going on with technology. And then part four, we'll dive into some surveillance. Is it private? Is it public? We'll find out. And part 5, regulations and regulatory bodies over AI. And then I'll close it out covering the big, beautiful bill. Kind of sounds like Build Back Better. We know how that turned out, right? I know we're going to have a fun night tonight. I guarantee you, you're going to learn, because that's all I want to do is educate you about what is really going on, what you really should be paying attention to. Okay. Because it's getting terrifying by the day. All right. By the day. It's incredible. All right. Bam. So that's pretty much my introduction. I am going to give away some merch. I don't know what I'm going to give away yet tonight, but I'll determine that here in a minute. I'm going to play another video for you guys. But I want to show you something first. And I may have shown it to you the other day. I don't remember. But just to make sure, whoo, boy, I got a lot of tabs to go through tonight. This is a 3D printer. Uses graphene to make food. And as you see over here in this section A, you have number 1, the food ink preparation. So starch-based pastry recipe. Fill up the syringe. Take it over here. Simultaneous printing and cooking all at the same time. And boom, there's your end product. Food safe consumption. Here's the actual machine. There's your little syringe. There's the printing head. So there you go. That is a 3D printer. Now, I have to ask you, let's say there was a vending machine, all right, and it had a 3D food printer inside of it, and you could pretty much pick what you want. You want some lasagna? Okay, boom. You know, you got 4 cheese lasagna, or I want some chicken cordon bleu, and poof. Or, hey, it's my coworker's birthday, and I need a birthday cupcake or a dozen, right? And it prints it out for you, whatever you want on it. You send it a file through Bluetooth of an image you want, and you get your cupcake, and that image is on your cupcake. Like that. Are you seeing where this is going, folks? I know. It's nuts. It's nuts. It's crazy. So a 3D printer. Now, okay. Source for whatever's going in that tube. And I don't know if there's going to be a bunch of different tubes. You know, like one would be pasta, one would be sugar or starch, rather, or whatever. I don't know how to make 3D food. You know, so, but would you? And that's going to blend right into this next video. So, without further ado, we already went through that one. So I'm going to pass that.
We're trying to bring those.
There.
The FBI now says 2 Chinese nationals have been charged with smuggling a potentially toxic fungus that could ravage crops in the United States. They were trying to bring those to the homeland. Now, one of those suspects is in custody, will appear in a federal courtroom tomorrow at 1 p.m. The other is in China after he was denied entry into the U.S. while trying to smuggle in that biological pathogen last year. Really interesting details coming up. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany. Here's my co-host, Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Laura Trump, host of My View with Laura Trump, Kayleigh McGee-White, Fox News contributor, and Ari Fleischer, Fox News contributor and former White House press secretary. Well, the FBI warning Americans that our food supply may be the target of attacks from China. Here's a photo of the fungus found at the Detroit airport last year. It was found in 4 plastic baggies. It was stashed into wads of tissue paper. And authorities say that the toxins cause, quote, vomiting, liver damage, and reproductive defects in both humans and livestock. What were they doing with this? Why were they trying to bring this into our country? Now, according to a U.S. Attorney's office in Michigan, the 34-year-old Chinese researcher who works at the University of Michigan intentionally hid the samples in his backpack because he knew that the restrictions on importing them existed. The professor claims he had hoped to do further research on the fungus at his University of Michigan lab. FBI Director Kash Patel says, quote, this case is sobering. It's a reminder that the Chinese Communist Party continues to deploy operatives and researchers to infiltrate our institutions and target our food supply, an act that could cripple our economy and endanger American lives. Smuggling a known agro-terrorism agent into the U.S. is not just a violation of law, it's a direct threat to national security. Now, the details here are chilling. I have the complaint here. Carrier Bond pulled out some really interesting details, Emily. So listen to this. Zhuan is the woman. There was the boyfriend and girlfriend. So Zhuan's the woman. The FBI has evidence that she had done this before. She had worked with someone else to smuggle in the same pathogen. She gave the other person detailed instructions on how to smuggle it in a book and said there are usually no problems. Rest assured, I have mailed these before. So you wonder how many times she's done this. And then she lied on her visa, saying she was studying a topic distinct from the use of this pathogen. This raises all kinds of questions about subterfuge and frequency.
Absolutely. Look, this is absolutely frightening. And most frightening is how under the prior administration, this stuff was just swept under the rug in terms of the perceived and actual threat. Now, we know under the Trump first administration that Secretary of State Pompeo deployed a maximum pressure against China in all of those arenas. He saw and articulated that the threats to our intellectual property, our college campuses, our physical military bases, and so much more was profound and real. And if you look at the DOJ history of prosecutions and arrests, it was sky high because they were deploying resources toward this articulated threat. Cut to the Biden administration, and I guess everything's awesome. And now we're seeing the fruits of that investment by the CCP. This is on the heels as well of University of Michigan, other students that were arrested and prosecuted for counter surveillance and so much more. So look, this dovetails in with the topic as well of the visas and the college campuses of the students, right? And over 27% of foreign students being from China. And there's the direct correlation is obviously not China related. It's CCP related. And the fact that this administration now sees this for what it is and is dedicated to preventing this kind of thing is so relieving. But we have to know that the seeds have been planted and really buried deep under the prior administration. So for me, this is one in what is likely the tip of the iceberg.
I think you're right. You know, sadly, Laura, when you look at this woman's background, she got Chinese government funding for her work. And not only that, some of the information that she had on her said there was membership and loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, I think the overall takeaway is something that we've heard Donald Trump talk about for a long time. I think, you look at China, you look at the CCP, this is our greatest geopolitical foe, I think, in the entire world. I did an interview for my show this weekend with John Radcliffe, the CIA director. He said they are specifically looking and putting so much investment in China because they are such a big threat. When I look at this and I think about what it says there, that it could take out livestock, that it could take out all of our food supply, it could cause reproductive issues for humans. This is an overall push, I believe, from the CCP to try and take down the United States of America. There's a book called the 100-year marathon. And it details the fact that China has in the background been waging this kind of silent war that most Americans don't know about to try and usurp America as a superpower of the world. This seems like another step in that direction. Look at TikTok in China. These kids are all learning how to play, the cello, the violin. They're doing things to improve themselves. Look at it in America. We're teaching our kids to twerk. Look at the education between China and America. They have surpassed our American students long ago. When you look at this, you look at China buying up farmland, and then I look at something like this. To me, it says this is another step in China trying to take over America as a superpower.
Yeah, and John Radcliffe, the perfect person to talk to. He was a part of the first Trump administration when they were taking on Confucius Institutes on college campuses. Right. So they've been on this for a long time. Ari, the most chilling detail of this 25-page complaint is this. There's an interesting WeChat exchange between this young woman and her boyfriend. 1 week before she smuggled the pathogen into the United States, or he did, he told his girlfriend, once this is done, everything else will be easy. To which she replied, my seedlings are not usable yet. You could read that any which way, but it's a chilling way to read it when you compound it with the symptoms that Laura mentioned, reproductive birth defects, if this got out into the U.S. population.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more from law enforcement when they get into the details of this today. How deep does this go? What do they suspect? But what this takes me back to is after September 11th. After September 11th, the CIA concluded, and they said to the White House, that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when there will be a second attack. And the second attack that we feared the most and prepared the hardest to prevent was a biological attack, because that can cause the greatest destruction. And don't forget, we're dealing with a China that regularly hacks and infiltrates America's industrial infrastructure. They have made it a state business to get inside American systems, to disrupt them, to steal from us, to take, to harm us, not to mention what they've done with fentanyl to poison us. This is the China we deal with. And if this does turn out to be, and if the investigators say, if the Department of Justice reveals that this does appear to be tied to a biological attack, I don't know what the next step has to be with China, because that's an act of war. And we've got to be very cautious. I don't want to overplay this, but as you pointed out, Emily, this is frightening. If they're going to biologically mess with our food supply, we cannot sit back and take this.
No, you have to act, and I'm confident the commander-in-chief would act in an appropriate fashion. Kaylee, when you look at this and the events of this week, and then you look at the policies of the Trump administration, President Trump said, I want to look at visas on college campuses with these individuals who are protesting. And then we get that horrific attack where 8 Jewish men and women are burned because of their religion, a guy who overstayed his visa. Then you had Marco Rubio Thursday say, we're going to look at China visas too. And then you get this. I mean, they've been ahead of the ballgame here. And if there's not a footnote to substantiate the policies they're making, if there's not a better one than this, I don't know what will convince people.
Well, and Ari asked what the next step is. The next step is to revoke every single Chinese student visa. Keep in mind, this is the second national security-related incident involving a Chinese visa that we've learned about this week. There was another report earlier this week that a student in the University of Michigan, another Chinese national, fled the country after illegally voting in Michigan's election in November. Yeah. And he apparently voluntarily released his passport before doing so. But this is a pattern of behavior, and we need to keep in mind that China has a law requiring every single one of its citizens to spy on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. You see this with some of the details that were revealed in this affidavit, where this researcher was still receiving funding from the Chinese Communist Party to conduct research in the United States. And they are exploiting our visa program to do that. We are essentially holding open the front door to allow our greatest adversary to flood our country with people who are spying on us and undermining our national security. And you mentioned subterfuge, but what the Chinese government does in public is just as revealing. Let's remember last year, a Chinese state-run media outlet ran an editorial endorsing the pro-Hamas protests on U.S. college campuses because they know that if they target our higher education system and if they target my generation in particular, they can create division in our country, and that is exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah, without question.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-host, Harris.
This entire show is just going to continue. It's going to be like you're collecting dots along the way. You're like, damn. Oh, hey, that dot I got a couple dots ago goes with this dot over here. Wow, that's pretty cool, Floyd. Your mind's going to be blown by the time you get to the end of this show of exactly what's going on. Okay? Because next, you're going to get some financial advice from the JP Morgan Chase CEO, Jamie Dimon. And of course, that has no influence or bearing upon me or my show because I don't give financial, legal, or medical advice at all. This is for entertainment purposes only. Everything coming out of my mouth is just entertainment. It's not factual. Don't believe any of it. Go do your own research. So we're going to move right on to the next video. And hey, you're going to hear from the man yourself. I want to thank Darren Moore for producing this video that came out today. And man, I just like barely caught it. And I caught enough to like, oh, I need to play this whole thing. And then when I played the whole thing, I went, oh. Well, I need to share this financial advice from Jamie Dimon to all the viewers on my show. So that's what I did. And I went and got them. And let me get through that video. All right.
If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing.
Going back to the Reagan years, you think bond vigilantes are back?
Yeah. You know, these are very large numbers. You've seen it a little bit. You know, you had the crack in the bond market in COVID a little bit. You know, the government did the right stuff, then they massively overdid both spending and QE. We borrowed and spent $10 trillion from 2020 to today. Okay, and you heard the numbers before. We also bought $4 trillion of your securities on top of the $4 trillion we bought in the first go round. Those numbers are true globally, not quite as big as ours, but the QE of us was $8 trillion. The QE of the rest of the world was another $8 trillion or something like that. You're talking about huge sums of money. We don't really know the full effect of that. And, you know, the bond dealers, which Gary mentioned, you know, inventories are much smaller than they used to be, partially because of rules and regulations. And you are going to see a crack in the bond market, okay? It is going to happen. And I tell this to my regulators, some of who are in this room, I'm telling you it's going to happen, and you're going to panic. I'm not going to panic. We'll be fine.
Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, is making some bold predictions about the U.S. debt market. He's saying that there's cracks happening right now in the Treasury market, specifically in the long end of the yield curve, the U.S. 30-year yield as well as the U.S. 10-year yield. The U.S. 30-year yield is almost at 5% and is continuing to grind upwards. When U.S. debt sells off, the Treasury yields rise. There's an inverse relationship. The big beautiful bill that just was passed was adding $4 trillion to the deficit, with $5 trillion needed to be added to the debt ceiling. As the government spends, the U.S. Treasury issues Treasury bonds into the markets. There are banks, foreign nations, consumers purchasing these treasuries, and the U.S. government is promising to pay them back at a different time. This is how the U.S. government raises funds.
Panic. We'll be fine. We'll probably make more money, and then some of my friends will tell me that we like crises because it's good for JP Morgan Chase. Not really. I tell people when Credit Suisse went bankrupt at the First Republic, it was terrible for the banking industry. I think we can make everything better, including that, by just changing and modifying certain rules and regulations, letting market makers intermediate more in the market. But to give you a number, like just JP Morgan alone buys and sells $3 trillion a day. And we move $10 trillion a day of money. And we're probably a tenth. So the money moving around the world is $100 trillion a day. The money moving around the investments, this is stocks, bonds, corporate governments, derivatives, credit, you name it, FX, sovereign debt around the world, 30 trillion. The people who set those long-term rates are those people, including you in the room. It's not the Federal Reserve. They can try to manipulate the long-term rate. They can do what's it called? They do the twist or whatever. It doesn't work for that long. So if you look at economic history, bad things happen. When those tectonic plates shift, it's very hard to see in real time. It is shifting, and this is one of them. I just don't know if it's going to be a crisis in 6 months or 6 years. And I'm hoping that we change both the trajectory of the debt and the ability of market makers to make markets. And also remember, there are a lot of people, going down to Washington who actually like bad markets. And the problem with the bad markets isn't that it's bad for the big banks who make markets. It's bad for the people who raise money, small businesses, asset-backed securities, middle market companies, corporations, the United States government. And that volatility scares people. And then also it happened, markets closed. And you saw that happen multiple times in the last 12 years where you couldn't sell a high yield bond. If you're going to sell a lot of treasuries, you could have had a little bit of issue. So yeah, it's coming. It's just part of all the stuff we talked about. And unfortunately, it may be that we need that to wake us up. It's an unfortunate thing. So.
Jamie Dimon talks about cracks happening in the U.S. debt market. And what he means by that is that the U.S. Treasury is going to issue so much debt that there is not enough buyers, and it causes the price of U.S. Treasuries to decline rapidly, which would make the yields increase rapidly. This would be devastating to the real economy as well as the financial economy, and it would ripple throughout the world. To keep this into perspective, the interest rates are higher than they were in 2008. In the past, I've talked about stablecoin providers buying U.S. debt to back stablecoins, and the stablecoin bill certainly helps in that regard. But the question is, will it be enough? Will there be enough buyers of U.S. debt to a point where the Federal Reserve doesn't have to step in? You see, the danger is when the Fed steps in and starts to manipulate the yield curve, they start buying longer-term debt, their balance sheet explodes, and that's where hyperinflation takes place. Stablecoin providers would more likely be mandated to buy short-duration bonds rather than long-term bonds like 10 and 30-year bonds. They're looking for cash and cash equivalent, not 30-year obligations or 10-year obligations.
And the American economy, in 40 years, we will not be the reserve currency. That's a fact. Just read history. Now I think we will be. Warren Buffett here would tell you we're enormously resilient. I agree with that. I think this time is different. This time we have to get our act together, and we have to do it very quickly.
That was a big answer. There's a lot to dig into there. So the takeaway is geopolitics.
I have a great
right?
quote for the first thing, too. Someone said the government spends like a drunken sailor, and someone else said, no, a drunken sailor spends his own money.
We are likely to have a completely different system in 40 years, a system that we can't even comprehend yet. But keep in mind, it is a ratio of debt to GDP. So the more GDP that we add to our economy, the more likely it is that our currency will stabilize and keep its purchasing power. And there is amazing advancements happening in technology. Bringing industry and manufacturing back to the United States is not wrong in this aspect. If the Fed tried to control the bond market and caused hyperinflation, this would be very beneficial to the crypto markets. This could certainly be a catalyst to reset our system into a new system that involves blockchain and crypto assets.
The tectonic plates are shifting. We got to get our heads wrapped around that. Those tectonic plates are the geopolitics with these terrible wars, terrible proxy terrorist activity around the world, North Korea, the potential proliferation of nuclear weapons over time, which is the greatest threat to mankind. And then you have the other tectonic shift is the global economy. So the global military umbrella of America, and then the global economy, of which trade is a part. You know, the other parts are do people want to partner with you? Do you have your alliances? Do you have investment agreements? And all those various things, and they're changing. And then our debt, which you just heard a bunch of folks talk about eloquently, it's large, and it's not just us. We added $10 trillion in 5 years. We have, you had Reagan up there talking about deficits. The debt to GDP was 35%, and the deficit was 3.5%. Today, it's 100% debt to GDP net, and a deficit of almost 7%, highest peacetime ever. And when the CBO does their numbers, which I don't really trust, by the way, they should do the stress test. Like, what happens if we go into a recession? That 7% will be 10%. And so we have problems, and we got to deal with them. And then the biggest one, underlying both that, is the enemy within.
The big banks are mandated by the U.S. government to hold a large amount of U.S. treasuries. These are collateral requirements. But the big banks are consistently doing stress tests, while the Federal Reserve and other regulators are doing them infrequently. The big banks are doing them frequently. So under these scenarios, what we're talking about is very sophisticated AI as well as traders shorting treasuries at the same time that they're holding them in order to manage their portfolio with as least amount of risk as possible. Now, when they're shorting treasuries, this is more sell pressure into the U.S. Treasury market that Jamie Dimon has said that there's already cracks happening in this bond market.
I wouldn't rethink it. We know what constitutes national security. We need, I was saying we shouldn't be stockpiling Bitcoin. We should be stockpiling guns, bullets, tanks, planes, drones, rare earths. We know what we need to do. This is not a mystery.
Did you say stockpiling Bitcoin?
I said we shouldn't be stockpiling Bitcoin.
Oh, it shouldn't be. Okay.
We should be stockpiling bullets.
Okay.
The military guys tell you that, if there's a war in the South China Sea, we have missiles for 7 days. Okay, come on. I mean, we can't say that with a straight face and think that's okay. So we know what to do. We just got to now go about doing it.
How often do we hear a CEO of a large bank tell us that we should be stockpiling bullets rather than stockpiling Bitcoin? JP Morgan is one of the largest banks in the world, and Jamie Dimon reveals that he just left China.
I just got back from China last week. They're not scared, folks. This notion they're going to come bow to America, I wouldn't count on that. And when they have a problem, they put 100,000 engineers on it. And
to me, this is very unusual for the CEO of a large bank to caution the public that he's very scared after he left China, that we should be stockpiling bullets, and also that the entire U.S. system is looking like it could collapse. The U.S. debt market is the entire U.S. system. The bond market is considered to be the smartest market, meaning that the smart money rules the bond market, and they're able to sniff out problems before the stock market or any other market is able to see them. The big banks cause these problems in the first place. They set off this chain reaction, and I certainly do not want to become or sound like a sympathizer towards the big banks, but there are very valid points that Jamie Dimon is making about the entire situation. They're going to make money off of the catastrophe. They see the catastrophe. They're prepared for it while the regulators are not. And they most likely will benefit from whatever happens. And he's giving an honest, frank warning, not only about the bond market, but about China and about the fact that we should be arming ourselves. The warning about China is not just coming from Jamie Dimon. You have U.S. generals sounding the alarm about China. There is a real concern for war happening in the near term. And if you study wars, you'll see that there is a pattern of economic despair. There's a pattern of trade wars, of sanctions, of all of the things that we're seeing.
So the military can't have a 30-year program. They've got to be able to cancel that drone program, build up that drone program, hire this person to do the software. We have to allow them to do multi-year budgeting. We essentially don't. The military tells me it costs them $50 billion a year. and we have to spend more.
With everything that Jamie Dimon has warned us about, his solution to the problem is actually to add more debt and create more pressure within the bond market. And you can argue that Jamie Dimon has been close to every president. Every single time there's an economic crisis, the president calls Jamie Dimon and asks for advice. He has also given the Senate and Congress advice as well in front of congressional hearings and Senate banking committees. U.S. lawmakers have leaned on J.P. Morgan and Jamie Dimon, and you can argue that where we are today is a direct result of the advice he has given.
And also remember, there are a lot of people, going down to Washington who actually like bad markets. And the problem with the bad markets isn't that it's bad for the big banks who make markets. It's bad for the people who raise money, small businesses, asset-backed securities, middle market companies, corporations, the United States government. And that volatility scares people.
There are large companies, there are large entities out there that lobby the government for things that are not in the people's best interest, but for that entity's best interest. And this includes things like war, recessions, or poisoning our food. The list goes on and on of the harmful things that companies would advocate for. The Trump administration received money from the crypto industry in order for him to raise money for his campaign. I ask myself, is the crypto industry a destructive industry like the war machine? You see, it's beneficial for debts and deficits to be added to the balance sheet of the government. It's beneficial for the U.S. dollar to be dethroned as the reserve currency. To achieve victory, we must amass our forces at the hub of all power and movement, the enemy's center of gravity. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this, please consider joining my Patreon. Weekly chats, ad-free videos, research, and much, much more.
Uh-oh. There we go. Sorry about that. So what'd you think about that financial advice from Jamie Dimon? Don't buy Bitcoin. Buy bullets. Okay. What's he telling you? He just came back from China. What did the first video before that tell you about China? Do you think a couple Chinese, came through the southern border? A couple? And this is where we're at. And as I continue, all of this information connects. And you're going to trip smooth out. Whew. So, yeah, that was pretty terrifying from Jamie Dimon, right? So now we're going to move into the law of technology. So let me go find this one. And no, it's over here. It's in, I've got all these lined up. Up here. Here we go. All right. Bioreason. Now, I just want you to look at these names on here, okay? Like I got Bo Wang, Chris Madison, Hani Gadzari, Regardzi, Omar Ibrahim, Hunun Daun, Arnav Shah. So we can probably guess that, these are Indian. This is obviously Asian, Middle Eastern, possibly, could be American. But, You see these names, some of them could possibly be Chinese. So, BioReason, incentivizing multimodal biological reasoning with a DNA-LLM model. That's large learning machine. Abstract. Unlocking deep, interperceptible biological reasoning from complex genomic data is a major AI challenge hindering scientific discovery. Current DNA foundation models, despite strong sequence representation, struggle with multi-step reasoning and lack inherent, transparent, biologically intuitive explanations. We introduce BioReason, a pioneering architecture that, for the first time, deeply integrates a DNA foundation model with large language model. This novel connection enables the LLM to directly process and reason with genomic information as a fundamental input, fostering a new form of multimodal biological understanding. BioReason's sophisticated multi-step reasoning is developed through supervised fine-tuning and targeted reinforcement learning, guiding the system to generate logical, biologically coherent deductions. On biological reasoning benchmarks, including KEGG-based disease pathway prediction, while accuracy improves from 88% to 97%, and variant effect prediction, BioReason demonstrates an average 15% performance gain over strong single modality baselines. BioReason reasons over unseen biological entities and articulates decision making through interpretable, step-by-step biological traces, offering a transformative approach for AI in biology that enables deeper mechanistic insights and accelerates testable hypotheses generation from genomic data. I know you're like, okay, Floyd, that was a mouthful, right? So, key contributions, basically, it's a novel multimodal architecture, the first successful integration of a DNA foundation model with an LLM, establishing a new methodology for AI-driven biological studies. Advanced reasoning methodology, a systematic training approach combining supervised fine-tuning and reinforcement learning that incentivizes multi-step biological reasoning. New biological reasoning benchmarks, development and curation of novel benchmarks for evaluating biological reasoning capabilities, including an annotated reasoning dataset for gene pathway and disease prediction dataset from KEGG, K-E-G-G. Empirical performance improvements, demonstration that BioReason outperforms both DNA foundation models and LLMs using independently or in simple combination with average performance gains of 15% over baseline. Interpretable reasoning traces, a mechanism for generating step-by-step biological reasoning traces that provides interpretable predictions, enhancing scientific insight and hypothesis generation. Here is the architecture. Here's your stacked DNA and text embeddings. And of course, this is all way above my educational level. But as you see, we're dealing with DNA sequences, folks. Okay, this is all very important. BioReason operates on two primary input streams: one or more genomic sequences and textual queries. The DNA foundation model transforms each input DNA sequence into a contextualized embeddings, while the large language model serves as the primary reasoning engine for text generator. Key to this integration is the preparation of the DNA embedding block, where genomic information is integrated into the LLM's input by stacking DNA embeddings with embeddings of the user's query and special tokens such as DNA start and DNA end. And this gives you blah, 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 blah. So, I'm not going to get into all of this, but here's the conclusion. And I went to Leo's Tools and I said, hey, over here, explain, Lucy. You got some explaining to do. All right. So I want to know what the hell all that meant. in Floyd terms. So here we go. Computational biology advancements. The excerpt discusses a new approach called bioreason that aims to advance the field of computational biology. Computational biology uses computers and algorithms to understand biological systems and processes, integrating DNA encoders and language models. Bioreason combines two powerful technologies: high-capacity DNA sequence encoders. These are algorithms that can effectively represent and analyze DNA sequences in a computer-friendly format. Flexible reasoning of large language models. These are advanced AI models that can understand and reason about natural language similar to how humans do. Unified framework for biological tasks. By bringing these two technologies together, bioreason creates a unified framework that can excel at two key tasks in computational biology. Mechanicistic pathway influence, identifying the underlying biological pathway and mechanisms that drive certain processes or outcomes. Variant pathogenesis. Hang on. Variopathogeneticity. I almost got that out. That's a hard roll for me. Prediction. Determining how changes or mutations in DNA sequences might impact the biological function and potentially cause diseases. Improved performance and transparency. The excerpt states that this multimodal approach, combining DNA and language models, consistently outperforms models that only use a single type of data. Additionally, the framework generates step-by-step explanations that can be easily validated by experts, making the analysis more transparent and interpretable. Reinforcement learning for further refinement. The system is further refined through a process called reinforcement learning, which helps improve its accuracy and opens up new possibilities for interpreting and analyzing genomic data. In summary, bioreason represents an innovative approach that integrates cutting-edge AI technologies to advance computational biology, enabling more accurate and transparent analysis of biological systems and genetic variations. We are biological systems. Like I said, all this goes together. And this is just, it took me a while to put this together today. And so for the first time, I actually really got down and prepared for a show and put everything in order and printed stuff out. So let's see how this goes. All right. So I just introduced you to bioreason. All right. Okay. Because we're talking about what? DNA data. So we're going to move on to the next one. And oh, yes, this is going to be fun, folks. This is going to be fun. I profiled this on many of my shows. But here we go. Are you ready? Association for Molecular Pathology versus Myriad Genetics Incorporated. Association for Molecular Pathology versus Myriad Genetics, Inc., 569, United States, 576, 2013, was a Supreme Court case which decided that, and I quote, a naturally occurring DNA segment is a product of nature and not patent eligible merely because it has been isolated, close quote. However, the court allowed patenting of complementary DNA, which contains exactly the same protein coding base pair sequence as the natural DNA, albeit with introns removed. The lawsuit in question challenged the validity of gene parents in the United States, specifically questioning certain claims in issued patents owned or controlled by Myriad Genetics that cover isolated DNA sequences, methods to diagnose propensity to cancer by looking for mutated DNA sequences, and methods to identify drugs using isolated DNA sequences. Prior to the case, the U.S. Patent Office accepted patents on isolated DNA sequences as a composition of matter. Diagnostic claims were already under question through the Supreme Court's prior holdings in Bilski versus Kapos and Mayo versus Prometheus. Drug screening claims were not seriously questioned prior to this case. Notably, the original lawsuit in this case was not filed by a patent owner against a patent infringer, but by a public interest group, the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, on behalf of 20 medical organizations, researchers, genetic counselors, and patients as a declaratory judgment. The case was originally heard in the Southern District Court of New York. The district court ruled that none of the challenge claims were patent eligible. The majority opinion called patenting isolated or purified natural products a lawyer's trick to circumvent the prohibitions on direct patenting of products of nature. Myriad then appealed to the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. The Federal Circuit reversed the district court in part and affirmed in part, ruling that isolated DNA, which does not occur by itself in nature, can be patented, and that the drug screening claims were valid, but that Myriad's diagnostic claims were not patentable. The Federal Court of Appeals considered the valid gene claims as directed toward compositions of matter rather than toward information like the district court did. They took a different view. On appeal, the Supreme Court vacated and remanded the case back to the Federal Circuit to reconsider the issues in light of Mayo versus Prometheus. On remand, the Federal Circuit held that Mayo versus Prometheus did not affect the outcome of the case. So the ACLU and the Public Patent Foundation filed a petition for certiorari. The Supreme Court granted certiorari and unanimously invalidated Myriad's claims to isolated genes. The Supreme Court held that merely isolating genes, even with introns removed, which are found in nature, does not make them patentable. However, the Supreme Court agreed that the friend of the court brief, the amicus curiae brief, submitted by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, that complementary DNA should be patent eligible because it does not exist in nature, but rather was engineered by man, even though this decision lacks scientific consistency. A prominent U.S. biotech patent lawyer commented on the SCOTUS decision, quoting, "It is inconsistent to conclude that isolated DNA and naturally occurring DNA are not markedly different because of their information content is the same, and at the same time find that complementary DNA is patent eligible despite having virtually identical information content to naturally occurring mRNA." This decision was not devastating for Myriad Genetics since the court only invalidated 5 of its 520 patent claims covering isolated naturally occurring DNA, thereby reducing its patent estate to 24 patents and 515 patent claims. Myriad continued suing its competitors. However, it was unable to get preliminary injunctions per eBay Inc. versus Merck Exchange, LLC, and most of these lawsuits were settled out of court. So, basically, the holding, where is the holding? Right to it. Justice Clarence Thomas on June 13th, 2013, delivered the opinion of the court, which all other members of the Supreme Court joined, except the late Justice Anton Scalia, who concurred in part and concurred in the judgment. The majority opinion delivered by Thomas held, and I quote, "A naturally occurring DNA segment is a product of nature and not patent eligible merely because it has been isolated. But complementary DNA or synthetic DNA is patent eligible because it is not naturally occurring, close quote. In part 3 of the majority opinion, Thomas wrote, as I conclude, it is important to note what is not implicated by this decision. First, there was no method claims before this court. Had Myriad created an innovative method of manipulating genes while searching for the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, which are those breast cancer genes, it could possibly have sought a method patent. But the processes used by Myriad to isolate DNA at the time of Myriad's patents were well understood, widely used, and fairly uniform insofar as any scientist engaged in the search for a gene would likely have utilized a similar approach, and are not at issue in this case. So that's basically what that's all about. If you want to go check it out, just go to their website. You can go here over to Wikipedia, and that's the Association for Molecular Biology versus Myriad Genetics Incorporated. So what does that tell you, Floyd? That if there was some kind of technology that one could use to program it to go into a biological entity and restructure the DNA from natural DNA to complementary DNA. Do they have technology like that, Floyd? They don't have any kind of bots or anything that they could right in you and they'd go to work. And no, that doesn't exist. Like I said, we're gonna go down this trail, folks, and it's pretty astounding. Pretty astounding. Because what happens if that happens to a human? Uh-oh. And remember, that decision was unanimous. Now, Scalia's passed away, and there's a couple other justices since 2013 that have, come and gone. So next, here we go. Rice University experts examine historic personalized gene editing breakthrough. The New York Times has just reported a historic milestone in medicine. A child has been cured using the first gene editing therapy custom built for an individual patient. The therapy corrected a single letter mutation in the genome, the root cause of a deadly rare disease. This breakthrough offers new hope for the more than 30 million Americans living with one of over 7,000 rare genetic diseases, the vast majority of which have no effective treatment. It also brings renewed attention to the importance of continued investment in fundamental research, which laid the groundwork for this moment. Rice University is home to a growing concentration of researchers advancing the science and tools that make these therapies possible. From CRISPR-based gene correction to cell reprogramming, the next generation synthetic biology. Gang Bao, a pioneer in nanomedicine, molecular imaging, and genome editing with long-standing experience researching CRISPR-based gene correction techniques for treating sickle cell diseases and other disorders, is available for comment. And he stated, "It's an extremely exciting moment for the field of gene editing," said Bao at the A.J. Foyt Family Professor of Bioengineering at Rice University. While ex vivo gene editing therapy has received FDA approval for treating sickle cell disease and transfusion-dependent beta thalassemia, this represents a historic milestone on in vivo gene editing for treating genetic diseases. There will be unprecedented opportunities in performing in vivo base editing for treating single gene disorders with high efficiency and safety. Caleb Bashor is a synthetic biologist who engineers gene circuits and can reprogram cell behavior with the goal of developing next generation therapies, including by guiding stem cell reprogramming and the differentiation and using sense and response circuitry to reprogram immune cell function. Quoting, it's simply extraordinary that a molecular tool created in an academic lab just a few years ago has already evolved into a life-saving therapy, Bashor said. He followed that up with this remarkable success story underscores why sustained investment across the biomedical research community is more vital than ever. Isaac Hilton develops genome editing technologies to precisely control human cell functions, aiming to better understand and treat diseases like cancer. This is a landmark moment for the field that highlights the therapeutic promise of genome editing, said Hilton, an associate professor of biosciences and bioengineering at Rice. Jerzy Zablowski researches methodologies for controlling and monitoring cells in one of the most complex systems in nature, the mammalian brain. His lab focuses on developing non-invasive gene therapy and diagnostics for brain disorders, including Parkinson's disease. Gene therapy is one of the most exciting frontiers in medicine, including for treating diseases in the brain where targeted, non-invasive approaches could make an enormous impact, Zablowski said. This is from May 15th, 2025. Here's the original article, and it's posted by Sylvia Cernia Clark. Now, there's a lot of universities and colleges here in the Houston area, and I've yet even finished Rice University. And I'm finding more and more technology, astonishing technology, right here in my own backyard. And I haven't even gone over to the U of H yet. Haven't even hit the UT. I still have Prairie View. So Texas Southern, it just goes on and on. There's a lot of universities and colleges around me. So there you have it. You have BioReason. Okay. You had the Supreme Court case clearly stating that a genetically modified organism is patentable. And then the forefront, cutting edge of where gene editing technology is, in that they've actually created a genetically modified human being. First one is a child. So there you have that. Now, as you see, I'm going to dovetail right into surveillance. Remember, go to the very beginning and continue along the path and pick up these dots as you connect them. And as I said in the comments, pay attention to the words. Every word matters in this show. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be presenting it, because there's some more information I'm not even going to cover in the show, because it just doesn't go with the narrative. So next up, and this is from January. I should do that. As I said, pay attention to the words, what we have over here. This is PNAS, and I forget what that stands for. There we go. Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America. So this research article right here under the engineering, and here's the authors. Microfluidic purification of genomic DNA. Let me repeat that. Microfluidic purification of genomic DNA. Here we go with that genomic DNA again. January 23rd, 2025. Significance. Extraction is an essential preliminary to genetic analysis, and next generation sequencing technologies place increasing demands on sample purity and integrity. In this paper, we demonstrate a microfluidic device for extracting purified DNA from cell lysates. Coupled shear and electric fields drive large polyelectrolyte molecules, such as DNA and RNA, to migrate across the field lines, creating a highly selective fractionalization that removes proteins, salts, and cellular debris. The device is unique in exploiting the flexibility of DNA to separate it from contaminants. A simple design cut into single layer of acrylic can achieve sample purity comparable to magnetic base extraction kits. The low cost of materials makes the idea attractive for point-of-care applications. Abstract. We describe a microfluidic device to extract DNA from a cell lysate without the need for centrifuges, magnetic beads, or gels. Instead, separation is driven by transverse migration of DNA, which occurs when a polyelectrolyte solution flowing through a microfluidic channel is subjected to an electric field. The coupling of the weak shearing and the axial electric field is highly selective for long, flexible, charged molecules, which DNA is the sole example in a typical cell lysate. As a result of migration to the walls, DNA is held near the channel inlet by electrophoresis. There is no flow near the channel walls, while the remaining components are eluded by the much larger, at least tenfold, convective flow. We have demonstrated the feasibility of the device by recovering up to 40 nanograms of purified DNA in less than 30 minutes from 10. I don't know what that symbol means. Math was not my, or chemistry, or biology, or school for that matter. Public education, who needs it? Of Escherichia coli lysate. Gel electrophoresis indicates minimal additional fragmentation during purification, up to the maximum length recorded by the gel, 60 kilowatt. Kilos per. Don't know what KBP means. All right. That's funny. Hang on. I got somebody coming over. But he's long. He got my gated community and got lost. Sorry. I was wondering why you wouldn't hear yet. All right. Electropherograms were also obtained for purified mammalian DNA using femto pulse system. Where the hell have I heard that word femto before? Probably some idiot on YouTube or somewhere telling me about femto technology. It doesn't exist. It's hypothetical. Y'all go Wikipedia that. Femto technology. This word right there. I'm sorry. I just I have to laugh at myself for being so far ahead of the curve. Electropherograms were also obtained for purified mammalian DNA using a femtopulse system. Fragment lengths up to 165 kbps, whatever those are. Yeah, I'm in here. Say hi to my dog. Say hi, doggy.
I did.
I know.
Hey, I'll be back in about.
Come on. 2 or 3 hours? Yeah. Come on by.
Just let me know. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you coming by.
Yes, sir.
I'll be here. I'll be working. It's what I do. Yeah. That's that was fashion designer Brandon Short of Lucid, Lusid. So go check out Lucid. I'm going to post a video of this fashion show I went to the other day. So yeah, he's going to come back over later. So he didn't know I was doing a live show, but he stopped in to say hello. Isn't that cool? Got lost doing it. So anyway, let me get back to the show. I got to give my boy a shout out. Sorry. Back over here to the microfluidic purification of genomic DNA. All right. All this adds up, folks. So right here, after we, talking about a technology that doesn't exist, extracted sample, femto, folks, if you don't know, okay, we have nanotechnology or nanoscale, and that's on the molecular level. And then right under the nanoscale, we have the picoscale, which is on the atomic level because atoms make up molecules. And then below the pico, the atomic level, we have femto, which is the subatomic level. Okay, Floyd, you go, boy. Extracted samples show strong amplification by PCR, which the original lysate does not. Mixtures of whatever that DNA is right there. I don't know what that symbol means. Again, I'm not a chemistry major, even though my dad was a 9th grade physical science teacher. And guess what I did? I failed 9th grade physical science. Imagine how bad he beat my ass for embarrassing him because we went to the same school. I know, public school was just so great. All right, so the mixtures of the whatever DNA and the BSA were used to determine the extent of the separation of DNA from physiological concentration of proteins, 30 milligrams per milliliter. The protein concentration in the extract, 0.3 to 0.5 nanograms, I guess that's per liter, were reduced by 5 orders of magnitude from the initial mixture. And that's the end of the article. Boom, 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 boom. So that just gives you a little, the microfluidic purification of genomic DNA. So you take that. Okay, we're going to go take this too. Uh-oh. What are Rice researchers doing? Rice researchers partnering with Houston Health Department on wastewater surveillance to stay ahead of measles outbreak. I wonder if they're using microfluidic. I wonder. As measles cases rise across Texas and the nation, a team of researchers at Rice University and the Houston Health Department is leveraging wastewater surveillance to detect the virus in the community. This innovative approach is part of the Houston wastewater epidemiology system and offers public health officials a powerful early warning system to track outbreaks and mobilize targeted interventions. Let me repeat that, folks. This innovative approach is part of the Houston wastewater epidemiology system and offers public health officials a powerful early warning system to track outbreaks and mobilize targeted interventions. The Houston Wastewater Epidemiology Core team consists of interdisciplinary experts, including Lauren Stadler, Associate Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Catherine Ensor, the Noah G. Harding Professor of Statistics, and Lauren Hopkins, Chief Environmental Scientist at the Houston Health Department and Professor in the Practice of Statistics and Environmental Analysis at Rice University. Houston wastewater epidemiology has been at the forefront of its field since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, and its work has contributed to the developing one of the most advanced monitoring systems in the country. Houston Wastewater Epidemiology is also a Centers for Disease Control and Prevention designated National Wastewater Surveillance System Center of Excellence, supporting research and innovation in wastewater surveillance nationwide. Quote, with infectious diseases like COVID-19, flu, and RSV, wastewater surveillance has proven to be an efficient, timely, and resource-effective tool, Stadler said. Now, with measles on the rise, we are using the same approach to detect the presence of this highly contagious virus in the Houston wastewaters before outbreaks occur. Proven early detection capabilities. Recent findings from Houston Wastewater Epidemiology's collaboration with the Texas Epidemic Public Health Institute confirms the effectiveness of wastewater surveillance for measles. In January 2025, Houston Wastewater Epidemiology retrospectively tested wastewater samples collected across the city and analyzed them for measles. Wastewater was collected on January 7th, tested positive for measles, and the first confirmed case was not officially reported until January 17th, 10 days later, Stadler said. The cases were travel-related and did not lead to an outbreak, but our detection validates the power of wastewater surveillance as a potential early warning tool. Okay? So I don't know if they're speculating that these two were connected or they validated that these two were connected, but let's continue. With measles actively circulating in Texas, the Houston Wastewater Epidemiology team has expanded monitoring across the city. A third case of measles was recently reported in Houston in March. An unvaccinated infant who was exposed to measles during international travel. No wastewater detections have been reported that are associated with this case since the patient wore diapers and was unlikely to be directly contributing to the wastewater stream. We are in full preparedness mode, Hopkins said. If measles reaches Houston, wastewater surveillance will help direct resources to impacted communities and encourage vaccinations. The measles, mumps, rubella MMR vaccine has been in use for decades. One dose provides 93% protection, while two doses offer 97% protection. This vaccine is incredibly safe and highly effective, Hopkins said. With such a contagious virus, it is critical that we get immunization rates back up to protect our communities. How wastewater surveillance detects measles. Stadler's lab has developed highly sensitive assays to detect measles viruses in wastewater. The process begins with collecting wastewater samples from Houston's 38 wastewater treatment plants, as well as from targeted sites that serve especially vulnerable populations as K-12 schools, nursing homes, homeless shelters. Once collected, the samples are concentrated to isolate the viral genetic material. Researchers then use droplet digital polymerase chain reaction PCR technology to amplify the virus's unique RNA signature, allowing for precise detection. A key breakthrough in Stadler's method is the ability to distinguish between wild-type measles, which signals infectious cases, and the vaccine strain, preventing false alarms from vaccine-related shedding. A recent paper published in Environmental Science and Technology outlines how a team led by Zhijing Wu, a postdoctoral scholar in Stadler's lab, and members of Todd Tregan's group in the computer science department at Rice, developed and validated an assay to differentiate these strains in wastewater with an eye toward enhancing surveillance of vaccine preventable diseases. Stadler's lab successfully validated the assay using wastewater from a Chicago facility during an active measles outbreak. When people get the measles vaccine, they shed an attenuated, non-infectious version of the virus, Stadler said. Our lab developed a method to differentiate between vaccine-derived shedding and actual measles infections, which is critical for accurate and timely public health responses. Why wastewater surveillance matters. Lauren Stadler, Associate Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Rice. Measles, which was declared eliminated in the U.S. in 2000, has resurged due to declining vaccination rates, with misinformation largely driving this trend. National immunization levels have dipped below 95% threshold required for herd immunity, putting children and vulnerable populations at increased risk. Texas has already reported numerous confirmed measles cases, including the deaths of 2 unvaccinated children. Measles is extremely contagious, even more contagious than COVID-19, Stadler said. With vaccination rates dropping, we have been preparing for an uptick in outbreaks. Wastewater surveillance allows us to track infections without requiring individuals to seek testing, making it an unbiased and privacy-protecting method for public health monitoring. Unlike clinical reporting, which depends on symptomatic individuals seeking medical attention, wastewater surveillance captures data from an entire community, detecting viruses shed through urine and feces. The method allows researchers to identify infections, in some instances before individuals show symptoms or visit healthcare providers, enabling early intervention, whatever that looks like. The Houston Wastewater Epidemiology team is available for interviews about wastewater surveillance for infectious diseases. I want to thank Alex Becker for doing that article. Again, I covered it in a video ago. Are you seeing how all this is getting connected? All the dots seamlessly. So, as I've been raising the alarm, what about regulations, Floyd? As I said, things are happening daily. Daily. So open my email, boom, I get a notice. Okay, Floyd, that's cool. Where are we at over here? I got to read this one from this one's from the U.S. Department of Commerce. All right, and I printed it out, so I'm going to read it to you. While I read it to you, we're gonna see how you're doing. We're gonna see how you're doing. But first, we're gonna give a book away. We're gonna give away this ebook, Anna LaFleur's On Trust, Revocable, Irrevocable, Foreign, Land, Express, College Education, Charitable Remainder Trust, instructions, templates, examples, every other instrument that you would need to set it up, operate it, and beyond. An heirloom that you can pass down to other relatives, friends, family, siblings, clergy, whoever. How we play is we play over in my Telegram room, so it's totally transparent for everybody that you can see who won just before I do. Okay, so everybody's got eyes on the ball. If you're not part of my Telegram room, I am the Fearless Floyd Show everywhere, so go over there. For everybody who participated in the memorial and so birthday sale, thank you, everybody. I think I got everybody taken care of. I have one straggler, I believe, that I fulfilled today. So thank you, everybody, for participating. Missed out, I'll see you probably Black Friday. But this came out. I subscribe to the U.S. Department of Commerce newsletter. So I get updates. This is from Tuesday, June 3rd for immediate release, folks. So I'm going to put something on for you. Don't stare, okay? Don't stare. You can take long peeks, but you can't stare. Office of Public Affairs. Statement from U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick on transforming the U.S. Artificial Intelligence Safety Institute into the Pro-Innovation, Pro-Science U.S. Center for Artificial Intelligence Standards and Innovation. Washington. Under the direction of President Trump, Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick announced his plans to reform the agency formerly known as U.S. AI Safety Institute into the Center for AI Standards and Innovation, CAISI. I guess it's Casey. AI holds great potential for transformational advances that will enhance U.S. economic and national security. This change will ensure commerce uses its vast scientific and industrial expertise to evaluate and understand the capabilities of these rapidly developing systems and identify vulnerabilities and threats within the systems developed in the U.S. and abroad. For far too long, censorship and regulations have been used under the guise of national security. Innovators will no longer be limited by these standards. Casey will evaluate and enhance U.S. innovation of these rapidly developing commercial AI systems while ensuring they remain secure to our national security standards, said Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. Casey will serve as industry's primary point of contact within the U.S. government to facilitate testing and collaborative research related to, harnessing and securing the potential of commercial artificial intelligence systems. To that end, Casey will work with NIST organizations to develop guidelines and best practices to measure and improve the security of AI systems and work with the NIST Information Technology Laboratory and other NIST organizations to assist industry to develop voluntary standards. Establish voluntary agreements with private sector AI developers and evaluators, and lead unclassified evaluations of AI capabilities that may pose risks to national security. In conducting these evaluations, Casey will focus on demonstrable risks such as cybersecurity, biosecurity, and chemical weapons. Lead evaluations and assessments of capabilities of U.S. and adversary AI systems, the adoption of foreign AI systems, and the state of international AI competition. Lead evaluations and assessments of potential security vulnerabilities and malign foreign influence arising from use of adversaries' AI systems, including the possibility of backdoors and other covert malicious behavior. Coordinate with other federal agencies and entities, including the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and the intelligence community to develop evaluational methods as well as conduct evaluations and assessments. Represent U.S. interests internationally to guard against burdensome and unnecessary regulation of American technologies by foreign governments and collaborate with the NIST Information Technology Laboratory to ensure U.S. dominance of international AI standards. Casey will continue to operate within NIST and regularly collaborate and coordinate with other organizations within NIST, including the Information Technology Laboratory, as well as other bureaus within the Department of Commerce, including the Bank of International Settlements, BIS. Okay. There we go. So that's your government at work, right? So what else do I have up here? Okay, so let's go see what that's the government, right? So let's go see what the private sector, corporations, what are they doing? That one's next, right? Yeah. Come on, I had you all loaded up. All right. Sorry about that. I haven't listened to this, so we're gonna listen to it together. But this is from Yoshua Bingio. Today marks a big milestone for me. I'm launching Law Zero, a nonprofit focusing on a new safe by design approach to AI that could both accelerate scientific discovery and provide a safeguard against the dangers of agentic AI. So let's go listen to this. As I said, I haven't listened to it. Yep, everything's cranked. And this is for fair use, informational purposes only.
Law Zero is a non-profit organization working on solving the scientific problem of how do we design AI that will be safe. Currently, AI is developed to maximize profit. Very powerful AIs that know a lot could help malicious people with disinformation, bioweapons, cyber attacks. If we lose control of rogue superintelligent AIs, they could greatly harm humanity. So we're trying to design AI that will be safe by design, that will be trustworthy by design, that will be honest and humble. One of the first objectives is to develop a form of AI that can be used as a guardrail to make sure other AIs are behaving well. AI could be immensely beneficial if we make sure it is not going to harm people, either in the wrong hands or of its own. I often get the question whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic about the future of AI, and my answer is always, it doesn't matter. The only thing that does is that each of us can do something to move the needle towards a better world.
I don't think I could have said that better myself, right? So there are people out there who are paying attention now. How much authority and control are they really going to have? And, you know, can we get everybody on the same page, or they're going to be, you know, like half the country we know are mentally ill. They're still believing there's a Democratic Party and that the Democratic Party is like really for them. So that's what we're dealing with, folks. A lot of asleep people for sure. Now, again, with further regulations, all this dovetails together. So let's go see what's happening over at one of those departments, bureaus, and agencies of our just wonderful federal government, right? That just loves us to death, takes care of us, you know, has our best interest always at heart. FDA. Well, actually, this is from the Epoch Times or Epic Times, dated June 3rd, 2025. And this is by Zachary Stieber, senior reporter. FDA launches new artificial intelligence tool. The tool is being used in scientific evaluations and clinical reviews, according to the agency. Basically, what they're discussing here is the Food and Drug Administration on June 2nd launched a new artificial intelligence tool. FDA officials said ELSA, the tool, will help employees work more efficiently. The agency is utilizing ELSA to speed up clinical protocol reviews and scientific evaluations, as well as to identify targets for inspections. FDA officials described ELSA as a large language model powered AI tool designed to assist with reading, writing, and summarizing. They said it can summarize adverse events to help with safety profile assessments, compare labels faster than humans, and generate code to help develop databases. Today marks the dawn of the AI era at the FDA with the release of ELSA. AI is no longer a distant promise, but a dynamic force enhancing and optimizing the performance and potential of every employee, FDA Chief AI Officer Jeremy Walsh said in a statement. AI refers to computer systems that perform complex tasks typically performed by humans. Dr. Marty Makary, the FDA's commissioner, said in May that the FDA would immediately start using AI and fully integrate it by the end of June. Following a very successful pilot program with the FDA scientific reviewers, I set an aggressive timeline to scale AI agency-wide by June 30th, Marquez said on Monday. Today's rollout of ELSA is ahead of schedule and under budget, thanks to the collaboration of our in-house experts across the centers. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who leads the Department of Health and Human Services, the FDA's parent agency, cheered the development, calling it a revolution in public health. In a post on social media platform X, the FDA recently fired thousands of employees. HAS officials had said they would cut about 3,500 full-time workers, but ended up terminating about 2,500, according to a Senate Democratic report. Makary told a congressional panel during a recent appearance that no scientific reviewers were fired, although some research scientists were among those terminated. President Donald Trump has promoted the use of AI, saying in one order that with the right government policies, we can solidify our position as the global leader in AI and secure a brighter future for all Americans. The first report from Trump's Make America Healthy Again MAHA commission, headed by Kennedy, contained markers of AI, including non-existent studies and multiple instances of oocyte, which developers say is inserted by OpenAI's ChatGPT AI tool. The pattern is consistent with other cases we've seen using generative AI to create citations. Dr. Ivan Oransky, co-founder of the Retraction Watch and executive director of the Center for Scientific Integrity, told the Epoch Times in an email. The fact that these fake citations made it into the report are evidence that no one checked the report for rigor. That should concern anyone who reads it or considers relying on it. The 73-page report was updated in late May to fix 58 errors, including 39 citation errors, according to an Epoch Times analysis. When asked whether the commission used AI, the White House referred reporters to the HHS, which declined to directly answer the question. Minor citation and formatting errors have been corrected, but the substance of the MAHA report remains the same. A historic and transformative assessment by the federal government to understand chronic disease epidemic afflicting our nation's children, the spokesperson told the Epoch Times in an email. Sylvia Zhu contributed to that report. And there's a picture of Zachary Steiber, based in Maryland. Thank you for that. So where are we going with this, Floyd? Well, next on the agenda, I about got this time perfectly. Where's it at? Oh, yeah. AI, regulations, surveillance. Oh, let's go check this out. Marjorie Taylor Greene sounds alarm over AI provision. In one big, beautiful bill act, I would have voted no. Representative Marjorie Greene is sounding the alarm about a provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that would restrict states from regulating artificial intelligence for a decade, 10 years, by Alex Nitzberg. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who voted to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in the House last month, slammed a provision of the proposal on Tuesday, noting that if she had realized it was in the measure, she would have voted against passage. The provision Greene is sounding the alarm about would significantly restrict states from regulating artificial intelligence for a decade. And I'm quoting, except as provided in paragraph 2, no state or political subdivision thereof may enforce during the 10-year period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act any law or regulation of that state or a political subdivision thereof limiting, restricting, or otherwise regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems entered into interstate commerce, close quote. The provision reads in part. Greene disclosed in a post on X that she did not know about the provision of the proposal when she voted to pass the measure last month. Quote, full transparency, I did not know about this section on pages 278 through 279 of the OBBB that strips states of the right to make laws or regulate AI for 10 years. I am adamantly opposed to this, and it is a violation of state rights, and I would have voted no if I had known this was in there, she noted in the tweet on Tuesday. We have no idea what AI will be capable of in the next 10 years, and giving it free rein and tying states' hands is potentially dangerous. This needs to be stripped out of the Senate. When the OBBB comes back to the House for approval after Senate changes, I will not vote for it with this in it. We should be reducing federal power and preserving state power, not the other way around, especially with rapidly developing AI that even the experts warn they have no idea what it may be capable of, Greene added. Representative Eric Swalwell, Democrat from California, responded to Greene's posting by tweeting, "You have one job, to read the fucking bill. Maybe instead of doing this, you should have read the bill," conservative commentator Dana Loesch tweeted in response to Greene's comments. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act runs a bit more than 1,000 pages long. Greene told Fox News Digital during a phone call on Wednesday that if she ever ceases to be humble as a representative and willingly to publicly admit that maybe I've made a mistake and then I shouldn't be a representative. But the Congresswoman explained that she believes that this is far more important discussion than Marjorie admitted that she missed reading a little clause lodged within the lengthy bill. Greene said that she believes she should have been able to trust Republicans that we wouldn't be destroying federalism with one big, beautiful bill. That was why I didn't expect, because the state rights, that's federalism, and Republicans are focused on reducing federal government power and protecting state rights. However, this bill literally destroys state rights for 10 years, destroys federalism. She said that regardless of which party is in charge, this is something that we just can't allow to happen. On Tuesday, business tycoon Elon Musk blasted both the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and the lawmakers who voted to pass it. Quote, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it," he tweeted. Alex Nitzberg is a writer for Fox News Digital. Well, in my little humble opinion, okay, as somebody who did some legal work in a prison law library, if they do pass, I believe that one will be challenged by, I would hope, all 50 attorneys generals, as well as the attorney generals of every U.S. territory, all of them challenging it because state rights rule. The whole reason there's a federal government is because of the states. And again, power rarely cedes power. You see, they're trying to take it all. All right, so that's the big beautiful bill, and I'll give you my my little breakdown on that. Now, lastly but not leastly, Palantir. All right, we got the contract Palantir. So I went and asked some questions. Let me go find out where that's at. Jesus, I thought I had that pulled up over here. Aha. So I went and asked a question. I know I'm running up on 2 hours here, so I have to be extremely judicious with my time. Palantir contract department. So I went and found out because it always said and more. So what's the more part? So I went and looked and I asked, okay, because we already know that it's doing the contract with the Social Security Administration and Internal Revenue Service, right? We know they're working with ICE. So Palantir Technologies has been involved in contracts with multiple U.S. departments, agencies, and bureaus, reflecting in its extensive role in both government and private sectors. Here is a detailed breakdown of the specific entities involved: the U.S. Department of Defense, the U.S. Army, U.S. Intelligence Community, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Social Security Administration, U.S. Internal Revenue Service, additional agencies and bureaus, California Police Departments. Summary, table, department, agency, bureau, contract details, key projects, tools. This comprehensive overview highlights the diverse and significant roles Palantir plays across various U.S. government entities, underscoring its importance in national security, health, and law enforcement initiatives. There you go. And I'm going to roll out the show with this last video. This is from, I believe, 1998.
Novelty is not necessarily good or nice. Novelty is complex. That's what it is. And so I see really a concatenation of tendencies and forces here at the end. It's only going to get weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly, even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction. So I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods, because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. So between now and 2012, the next 14 years, I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And now that they have happened, nobody even bothers to mention what a big deal it is. The fact that there is no such thing as the Soviet Union, people never talk about it anymore. But when I was a kid, the notion that that would ever change was beyond conceiving. So the good news is that as primates, we're incredibly adaptable to change. Put us in a desert, we survive. Put us in the jungle, we survive. Under Hitler, we survive. Under Nixon, we survive. We can put up with about anything, and it's a good thing because we're going to be tested to the limits. The breakdown of anything, and this is why the right wing is so alarmed, because what they see going on is the breakdown of all tradition, all order, all sanctioned norms of behavior. And they're quite right that it's happening, but they're quite wrong to conclude that it should be resisted or is somehow evil. The mushroom said to me once, it said, this is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse. And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation that will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion. Novelty theory is something I've been working on since the early 70s, inspired by psychedelic plant experiences in the Amazon, to attempt to look at time and really deconstruct it and attempt to understand what it is. And this has been a wild intellectual ride leading to some pretty easily stated conclusions. One is that novelty, which is my term for complexity or advanced organization, novelty increases as we approach the present moment. The universe you and I are living in is a far more novel and complicated place than the early universe was. Well, some people would say, well, that's just a consequence of the unfolding of developmental processes. But this asks the question, what are developmental processes? Why should the universe have a preference for order over disorder? Especially when we have something called the second law of thermodynamics, which tells us exactly the opposite. Physicists believe the universe is running down ultimately into a state of disorder. But what I see is everywhere the emergence of more and more complex forms, languages, organisms, technologies, always building on the previously achieved levels of complexity. That was one of my insights. Coming out of that insight was the further understanding that this process of complexification through time is not proceeding at a steady rate. It actually follows a kind of asymptotic curve. In other words, it's happening faster and faster. And this was a revelation to me because it allowed me philosophically to contextualize the human world and to understand that human technologies, languages, migrations, art movements, ideologies are not something different from nature. They're the same process that we see in the movement of continents, the evolution of new species of animals, except that these human novel emergent situations are happening much more quickly. So I see the cosmos, if you will, as a kind of novelty-producing engine, a kind of machine which produces complexity in all realms, physical, chemical, social, whatever, and then uses that achieved level of complexity as the platform for further complexity.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I appreciate you. Be sure and like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about this video. I have to get up my audience. I'm trying to get big time guests, and I can't get them because I have such a small subscription. So help me out. Share the video, watch it, like it, subscribe, notification, fearlessfloydshow@yahoo.com. If you want to reach me, thank you, everybody. And I will see you when I see you.